For today's social studies lesson, we're going to be reading a Scholastic News article titled Our Newly Elected President. Before we get started, we are going to look at today's vocabulary words. Our first word is president. So the president is the leader of our country. Our first president was George Washington. Inauguration, the event in which a newly elected president promises to lead the country. So last week, you may have watched the inauguration. It was last Wednesday. So it's the event in which a newly elected president promises to lead the country. Laws. Laws are rules made by the government. People must obey the laws or they could get in trouble. In some places, littering is against the law. Armed forces. The military of a country. The Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines, and Space Force make up the United States Armed Forces. Diverse. Diverse means different from one another. If you take a look at this picture, it says this class is diverse, different from one another. So, like I said, we're going to be reading about our newly elected president. So, on the front cover of today's article, you see a picture of a building that I think we will talk about within our reading. And we also have a picture of our new president. So our new president is Joe Biden. So he was recently Joe Biden was elected president. What is the president's job? Jobs of the president. So as we're reading today, I want you to be thinking about the different jobs the president has. On January 20th, there will be a big parade in Washington, D.C., our country's capital. Why? That day is Joe Biden's inauguration. It is the event in which he will promise to lead our country. So, like I had mentioned in the vocabulary words, the inauguration already happened. That happened last week on Wednesday. So, it was Wednesday, January 20th. Um, President Joe Biden was inaugurated into the office where he promised to lead the country. And that took place in Washington, D.C., which is the capital of our country. After the inauguration, he will be our president for 4 years. He will live and work in the White House. The president has many jobs. He works with other leaders in our country to make new laws. He also works with leaders from other countries. Sometimes they come to the United States. The president and his family host them in the White House. Sometimes he travels to see leaders of other countries. The president has his very own plane called Air Force One. The president is in charge of our armed forces. He helps decide how they work to keep us safe. Being the president is a lot of work. Would you like to be the president someday? So we talked about three different jobs that the president has. The first job, I'm sorry, is he works with leaders in our country to make new laws. So he works with other people, other leaders, and they come up with new laws or they change old laws. And remember, laws are rules that we follow, that is made by the government. He also works with other leaders from different countries, and they come over to the United States or he travels to them. But that's another big part of his job is working with leaders from other countries. And lastly, he is in charge of our armed forces. And remember, our armed forces are the Navy, the Army, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force. So all the different armed forces, he's actually in charge of them. So that's a very big job as well. If we look over here in the section that's blue, it says meet the vice president. Our new vice president is Kamala Harris. She says her first name is pronounced Kamala. The vice president has a diverse background, like many other Americans. Her mother was Indian American and her father is black. She says, I describe myself as a proud American. Harris is the first woman to be vice president. She is also the first black or Indian American person to be vice president. So this here is our vice president. So she is like the second in command. So she helps the president. She's the vice president. Um, and Vice President Harris, she has a very diverse background. So her mother was Indian American and her father was black. And then so she is the first um, vice president that is black or Indian American. And then another important thing about her is that she's the first woman vice president ever in the United States. So it was a very big deal. Okay, so for today's assignment, you guys are going to complete a few questions looking at this White House map. I'm going to see if I can make it bigger for you guys. So before you do the activity, I'm going to go over this map for you. So it says the White House map. So if we look right here, it says the president works in the Oval Office. So this building here and then this area of that building is the Oval Office. So that's where the president works. Here is a walkway. You can see it's labeled walkway. Another walkway here. This large building is called the residence. So the residence is the president's home. He lives here with his family. So this is where the president lives, and it's called the residence. Over here we have roses and other flowers grow in the rose garden. So you can see a garden here, and that is called the rose garden. Right here we have bees make honey in the beehive. So this is a beehive. And lastly, fruits and vegetables grow in the kitchen garden. So right here you can see is a garden. So it's the kitchen garden. So we have the Oval Office here where the president works. We have a couple walkways over here. This large building is where the president lives. That's his home, and it's called the residence. Here we have the rose garden. Right down here, we have the beehive. And over here, we have the kitchen garden where they grow fruits and vegetables. So you guys are gonna, after this video, you're going to click to slide 2 and you're gonna answer some questions based off of the White House map.